It's a towering, majestic mountain landscape. Mighty looming massifs, millions of years in the making, rise steeply, with differences of elevation of more than 3,000 meters over a distance of only a few kilometers. The Birchhorn, a sublime scene. The sharp outline of the Eiger North Face, jutting proudly into the sky, a monumental masterpiece of nature. A wildly rugged world of glaciers with bizarre forms and structures, sometimes resembling a white leathery elephant skin. This is the prospect in the region around the huge Aletsch Glacier, a World Heritage Site of extraordinary beauty.
On the north side, you have the steep, short glaciers, which are extremely sensitive to variations in the climate. And then there is this immense long glacier on the more shallow slope on the south side. This is at 23 kilometers, the longest glacier in the Alps. Not even the area around Everest has such a long glacier. Neither does Mont Blanc. This tremendous scene is unique to this region, and because this is the new catchment area, the glacier flows down through here, and you have a fantastic reversal of colors. The forests are above, the ice is below. Normally, it's exactly the opposite when you go into the mountains.
These are the natural processes that have occurred over many millions of years. 16,000 years ago, the ice cover extended to the entire central plateau area of what is now Switzerland. Today, the glaciers have retreated to the high mountain regions. It's a part of nature that is permanently moving, continually changing. Since the middle of the 19th century, the Aletsch Glacier has been constantly receding. In the past 150 years, its length has shrunk by 3 kilometers. The retreating glacier creates space for new landscape features, such as the glacial lake of Merjelen. The masses of ice have literally chiseled the rock formations at the rim of the glacier. Within only a few years after the retreat of the ice, pioneer plants colonized the approaches to the glacier. Shrubs and bushes followed 20 to 30 years later, and after a few more decades, the first trees appear. Over time, forests develop on the once glacier-covered ground. First come larches, then stone pines, the dominant tree species in the Aletsch forest. The stone pine grows very slowly under the rough climatic conditions prevailing here, but the slowness is made up for by longevity. Trees 600 to 700 years old are not uncommon. The Aletsch forest has been a protected area since 1933, giving nature a chance to work its unique processes, undisturbed by man. Evidence of this unbelievable biodiversity can be found in the rocky, semi-arid steppeland of the valley. One of the most popular animals in the Alps is the ibex. Once nearly exterminated, the Aletsch Birchhorn colony now numbers more than 700, an example of successful nature protection. The Aletsch Glacier is symbolic. Above the Concordia-Platz, which we're approaching now, is the confluence of a vast network of ice flows. The thickness of the glacier at the Concordia-Platz is 900 meters and fills the deepest geological depression in the Alpine Arc. Concordia stands for unity, harmony, solidarity, and symbolizes the common purpose of the municipalities in the Jungfrau Aletsch Birchhorn area to protect and preserve its magnificent nature. From the Ebnet Flue or the Ebnet Rock Wall, the view opens spectacularly onto the imposing peaks of the Bernese Oberland with the holiday resorts of Wengen and the famous glacier village of Grindelwald. Highlighted by the impressive backdrop of the Eiger, Mönch and Jungfrau. The Staubbach waterfall has inspired many painters and poets and has made the deep, steep-sided Lauterbrunnen Valley famous. The maintenance of land used for agricultural purposes is a fundamental requirement. The use of meadows by villagers at various altitudes up to the high alpine pastures is clearly regulated.
The areas under cultivation have a long history of protection too. In Grindelwald, almost 600 years ago, the inhabitants signed an agreement for the whole valley. It stipulated exactly how many cows, goats, and sheep should graze on the alpine pastures. This was calculated in cows' feet. It was exactly the same with the amount of cattle fodder produced. It had to correspond with the yield in the valley. So more than 600 years ago, a system of management and cultivation already existed, which prevented overexploitation and environmental destruction.
An old mill near Blatten above Natas. They're not millers at work here, but committed citizens who have joined forces to preserve the tradition of baking bread. Rye bread. Its dough is well worked and kneaded the evening before. After baking about 1.5 hours, the loaves, weighing some 400 grams, can be taken out of the oven. Rye bread at its best, and only for private consumption. Saffron is a cultural asset with a special significance in the area making up the World Heritage Site. The small saffron fields of Mund are in one of the driest places in Switzerland. Saffron requires the heat of the southern slopes, but also the frost at 1,200 meters above sea level. It has been cultivated at Mund since the 14th century. About 3 kilograms are harvested every autumn. Saffron, the gold from Mund, is of 18-carat quality. There's a distinctive race of goats in the Upper Valley. It's the black-necked goat, a typical high alpine race which requires a lot of care. The black-nosed sheep is also very popular in the valley. Their breeding has a long tradition, which can be traced back to the 15th century. One of the most impressive and spectacular achievements in railway engineering is the Jungfrau line on the north side of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. This bold undertaking started in 1896 and was finished 16 years later. What's extraordinary about the Jungfrau Railway is the fact that nearly the entire route of this cogwheel operation, which ran on electricity right from the beginning, is inside the mountain. The tunnel is about 4 kilometers long. It has been drilled through alpine limestone and gneiss and leads to the Jungfraujoch station at an altitude of 3,500 meters. The Jungfraujoch, crowned by the Sphinx. Under its dome is the highest weather station in Europe. Until about the middle of the 20th century, agriculture was the mainstay of the population of the Aletsch region. And today, the land still under cultivation around the villages is living proof of how extensively it was used in earlier times. The typical Valais farmhouse was usually a multi-story building and was a home for several families. It consisted of a section with stone walls and a section built in wood. The wood from the indigenous spruce and larch trees were mainly used, and the stones also came from the immediate vicinity. Other building materials included lime, which was burned mainly at the edges of the Aletsch Glacier. Many of the buildings using these materials still exist today. The nature and the landscape in this World Heritage Site are unequaled. A natural attraction for visitors are the many natural spectacles, like the famous Trummelbach waterfalls. They're unique in Europe. There's a long history of man's involvement with the land in the area. It's based on the centuries-old knowledge of the farmers and the other people living there. Because of this, the landscape has remained intact. The extraordinarily high natural value of this region is well known, and this has been confirmed by its inclusion in the UNESCO list of World Heritage Sites. The recognition as a World Heritage Site is therefore an honor, a kind of Nobel Prize. But with this recognition goes a responsibility to make sure this asset can be enjoyed by many generations to come.